Bilateral relations between India and Canada face the prospect of permanent damage unless the two choose to de escalate their unprecedented tensions over the incendiary issue of the brazen advocacy of Khalistan by a section of the Sikh population. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has continued his aggressive stance against India for the second day on October 16th. During a public inquiry into foreign interference in Canada's internal affairs, Trudeau said, and I quote, "The Indian government made a horrific mistake in thinking that they could interfere as aggressively as they did in the safety and sovereignty of Canada. We need to respond in order to ensure Canadians' safety," unquote. He only feebly tried to nuance his position, saying Canada is not looking to provoke or create a fight with India. To understand Trudeau's endgame in persisting with his damning accusations against the government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, MCR spoke to Terry Milewski, one of Canada's best known journalists and writers who has spent decades tracking the pro-Khalistan movement in his country. Welcome to Mayank Chhaya Reports, Terry. It's always a great pleasure to have you. I want to thank you for your time.
Thanks for the invitation. I appreciate it.
I just read that, I don't know how true that is, but Prime Minister Trudeau told the Foreign Interference Commission, it seems, that they had intelligence and not proof, evidentiary proof. Is that what is going on? Did you hear that?
Yes, I think it may just be a little linguistic point, really, that, I mean, if you've got intelligence that's good, go to the court, and it's evident. But if it's, something that somebody heard and it's hearsay, then it's not. But if I saw it happen and an intelligence agency wiretapped my phone, that's evidence. And it's no use saying, oh, it's only intelligence. So I think it's a bit of a sterile argument.
Why is he so coy about this? Why is he not saying straight on that we have?
Because they don't want to ruin the trial. They don't want to ruin the trial. Listen, it's completely routine. And I'm surprised that people are surprised by this, honestly. I mean, in Canada.
I think it's routine everywhere. You're right.
That the prosecution doesn't make their case in public, or the judge is going to throw it out. The judge is going to say, you can't try this thing in the public, to lay out the evidence, to make the guy look bad and in his reputation. They taint the jury pool. I mean, that's not, that's completely normal. The prosecutions are always coy about that. It's not something that the government of Canada has invented.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying at the very least, he could have said that we have evidence.
Yes.
Something that he has not said.
On that, I think you're quite correct. I think that he did make a strategic blunder at the outset of this by failing even to characterize the evidence. I mean, police and prosecution, both in Canada and the United States, do have press charges. They say, allegedly, according to these charges, these criminals did this and that and that and the other. But they don't lay out the details of the evidence. And because that is prejudicing the trial, and there are lines there not. And so there's a second restraint on the government in Canada's case, and that is the use of foreign intelligence. Remember that what we're talking about here, there are Canadian wiretaps, there are American wiretaps, and we shared these under the arrangement, the so-called Five Eyes intelligence sharing arrangement, and we can't release that. We get that intelligence from the U.S. Just between us basis, and we wouldn't have any Five Eyes intelligence if we went around broadcasting it on the CBC. That's not going to work. So I think that is. In some respects, not entirely, it doesn't jeopardize the whole case. But that aspect of the case, the government has to be very careful with that. And if he wrecked the case by blabbing about U.S. intelligence, he wouldn't just be in trouble with public for blowing the case. It was the Americans for blowing their intelligence.
My suspicion, Terry, is that perhaps the Canadian case rests very, very significantly on American intelligence and something that Americans may be rather wary of getting that revealed because of relations with India could become a bit difficult if that happens.
Yes, I think you're onto something there, because I was told, and I was not alone in this, early in the process, that it was really the American intelligence that was more detailed, and clinched the case was suggested by the Canadian wiretaps, which basically said, hey, how come these people have got friends inside the Indian intelligence agency? But they didn't necessarily have a lot of detail on what they were saying. There was no looking gun where they say, okay, please go and kill Hadi Nidja. I will pay you X amount of dollars.
Right.
It wasn't that good, but it got better. And there was more detail in the American intelligence, for example, as quoted in the indictment of Nikhil Gupta, who is alleged in the FBI's indictment in New York to have been the handler who was sent out, hired by a government employee in New Delhi, go out and hire some goons or a hitman to dispose of the Chief Justice leader, Gopal Singh Panun.
Right.
He's quoted there in the indictment, paragraph 6, paragraph 28, saying that Nijjar was also telling the hitman, obviously recorded, telling the hitman that Nijjar is also target of this same plot. It's one plot with those two and other targets. So anyone who says, well, that's a completely different case, the American case, the Canadian case, no, unrelated, completely unrelated. You hear that a lot. It's absolute bunk. It's one plot with many targets.
Speaking of Pannoon, I saw a video where he claims that he had been in touch with Trudeau for the better part of the last 3 years. Isn't that problematic?
Yes, it is, because Gopal Singh Panun habitually whips up hate and whips up, let's say, the fan mail terrorists of various kinds, Khalistani terrorists, I mean, who include naming the referendum headquarters for his referendum on the independence of Khalistan after Talbinder Parmar, who's only the worst mass murderer in Canadian history. Is the author of the Air India bombing in 1985. 331 totally innocent civilians out of the sky for nothing. I mean, it was the worst act of terrorism anywhere until 9/11. And in my view, Panun's influence, for example, going to the memorial for the Air India victim, say how badly he feels for the victim, while he's simultaneously picking Lamar, the mastermind of who killed them, those victims, while he is and celebrating him as the poster boy of the referendum campaign. I mean, pick a lane. I mean, that's, to me, that's too much. I mean, and the recent escalation of that in Canada by Khalistanis showing up and photobombing memorial ceremonies as they did last year, and plans certainly to do again on the 40th next year, 40th anniversary, I mean, of the bombing. That escalation, going up and crying Khalistan's Zindabad when the families are trying to mourn their dead,
Right.
that crosses so many lines. You barely want to think about it. But that's what's happening, and Panun is the man behind it. So he's and he also traffics in fake news and wild exaggerations, publicity calling to boycott Air India on June 23rd, the anniversary of the bombing.
Right.
it's not very kind to the families of the
No,
victims.
it's not. People don't realize we are barely 2 weeks away from the 40th anniversary of the assassination of Indira Gandhi.
October 31st.
Indeed, and I wrote about it. It's and to for Trudeau to have come out with this, maybe he didn't realize it himself, is fairly interesting and significant to me. I don't think he even considered that fact when he was saying what he was saying, and now he's doubling down on it. What do you think is the end game here, politically and legally?
Well, I think that Trudeau knows that he's probably toast, to use the polite word. And the pollsters aren't lying. And let's face it, I mean, it happened to Harper, it happened to Chrétien. The decade in power is usually abbreviated to about 9 in Canadian politics. And your time is up. It doesn't really matter. The details don't matter. People are tired of you and they want a new prime minister. That's just the case. And he seems to be at that stage. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. It's not beyond the bounds of possibility. But I think that he's not playing some grand strategic card here to make India look bad. There's no point in that. That doesn't serve Canadian interests in any way. Or to join with the CIA, as I've been told by some Indian correspondents, join with the CIA in a plot to smear India and tear its influence down because they're afraid now that India is a rising power and blah, blah, so whoa, 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 whoa. None of this makes much sense, number one. And number two, I think that Trudeau means what he says, that if he's going to go, and his term in office is ending, he would like it to be part of his legacy. Not that he sat there and said, when he was told that foreign agents were killing Canadian citizens on Canadian soil, I don't care. The guy was a terrorist anyway. Come and kill him. I'm not going to raise my voice about that. Be a bad prime minister. Rather, that he would like to go out as somebody who stood for something, liberal cause, Canadian sovereignty, that is to say, that we're not going to tolerate that kind of behavior, even by a mighty nation, a rising nation, and a valued trading partner called India. We're not going to stand for it. And if I said the opposite, and I said nothing, and I passively endorsed and looked the other way while foreign agents come to Canada and kill people, he doesn't want to go down as that kind of prime minister.
Right. What happens now in terms of bilateral relations? You think? Do you think the two countries can recover from this for the foreseeable future?
I've been thinking about that one, and that is a difficult question. Thanks a lot for asking it, making my life harder. The way I see it, and you may call it simplistic, but the way I see it is that this ends with a grubby little deal. It doesn't end with a grand agreement, signed with a flourish. Trudeau and Modi join hands and sign a declaration that they're going to be the best friends. This isn't going to happen. It's all going to be, I believe, swept under the rug with quiet commitments by the government of India, not made public for the consumption of the Indian public, that they're going to cool it on this kind of behavior. And that in return, they will, that in addition, I'm sorry, I'll correct that. That's part of it. But that we will hold accountable those who are directly responsible in the Nijar affair. By holding them accountable, I don't mean lock them up for their lives in a Canadian prison, but rather levy local charges against them, which after a couple of years, if the guy gets quietly released, there's no press release and nobody knows about it, okay, they have to have somebody to throw to the wolf. Somebody has to be under the bus and say, look, we're holding him accountable. He's going to be on trial, and boy, we're going to give him a really hard time. And then privately, they'll give him a gold watch and thank him for his service. Then, on the other hand, the Indian leadership, Mr. Modi, who's mindful of his popularity, particularly in view of the outcome of the recent elections in India, where now he's scrambling to form a government. He would be able to say, we scored a great victory in these negotiations. We scored a great victory, and Canada has now signed a paper committing to crack down on Khalistani propaganda in Canada.
Right.
And what form that takes about the Canadians, but at the very least, something that would be completely rational and a victory for Canada would be if the Prime Minister, whoever it is, when my imaginary agreement comes to pass, steps up and says, okay, from here on in, no member of my party, I hope no member of yours in the opposition, will attend any festival and any Vaisakhi parade where there are to be displayed posters honoring and glorifying the worst mass murderer in Canadian history. Or there won't be any trucks driving through the center of Brampton, Ontario, carrying a life-size diorama illustrating and celebrating the assassination of Indira Gandhi, as you rightly point out, October the 31st, 1984. So that would be a victory for Canada. It would be a righting of a balance which has got completely out of whack, where anything goes, apparently, and all parties, Trudeau, Polyev, and Jagmeet Singh, all go in Toronto to a Khalistani event where everyone's shouting Khalistan Zindabad, and let's break up India, and they all just don't bat an eyelid. It's all perfectly normal. Right. If this the Prime Minister on Canada's behalf in this imaginary negotiation signals that this is going to come to an end, we're not going to win. The whipping up of more terror and the whipping up of hate against India and Indians, Hindu attacks on Hindu temples. We're not going to put up with that anymore. That could legitimately be painted as a victory for Canadians and Indians.
Right. Given your long experience, the way Trudeau has doubled down for whatever reasons, do you think he has something of substance that he's very confident about, or he's just bragging for no reason?
Yes, it's another good question, because the RCMP haven't produced it, have they? They haven't charged anyone in India. They've charged, in the Nijar case, 4 punks, if you'll excuse me, who came as so-called students and didn't apparently study anything, maybe how to get a gun. And they have so far been charged with murder, but we don't know who paid them. I mean, somebody paid them, because what beef do they have with them?
Right.
We don't know of any beef that they had with Niger. And before that, by the way, comes the trial of the similarly 2 punks, white punks, Fox and Lopez, I believe, who are accused of the assassination of Rapudaman Singh Malik a year earlier, 2 years ago. Also in Surrey, in a very suspicious case. We don't know whether it was gang warfare, a local vendetta, perhaps implicating even Nijar himself. I mean, this is a stew of possible motives and speculation, and I don't think the RCMP have sorted that out either. So we haven't got to the bottom of these murder cases to anything like the extent to which the FBI have gone in the American indictment, where I've already described some pretty detailed stuff. We haven't got to that level of detail. Who's behind it all? We haven't got there yet, but it's clear from the decision, never mind what they actually said very carefully at a press conference, the fact that the RCMP, led by their commission, picked up to say, look, We're non-political, and this is real fun. This isn't some politician trying to boost his own profile facing political doom. Trudeau. This isn't him talking. This is us talking, and we're interested in crime, not politics.
Just last couple of things, Terry. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that this was indeed an operation conducted by some elements of the Indian state. You, uh, I would, I would like to believe that they would have kept a series of fall guys ready in case things went south. Don't you think they would have known that this can be traced back, considering everybody's tapping everyone else these
I
days
mean,
now?
it does read like a cheap movie, doesn't it? A bit. I mean, the more you look at the indictment, there's a section there, you may have noticed it, where allegedly the handler in New Delhi, talking to the alleged hitman in New York, is saying, "Oh yeah, we're all rooting for your success in this mission to kill, and look, here are all my buddies all waiting on your success." Turns the phone around on a video call, shows these guys in suits in a conference room, New Delhi.
Sure.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. I'm sure they were really happy to be on camera at that point. I mean, really? Were they that confident that they
Right.
didn't? Oh, did they smile and wave too while they're on camera? Come on. And does the FBI have that video? I'd like to see that. I
Right.
mean, there are elements like that which sort of almost pass belief, really, that people. I mean, I
Right.
suppose it's possible that they could be, if they were confident enough to launch a murder operation in somebody else's country, not just one, but several targets, prominent targets who were known to be at risk. I mean, that takes guts. That takes some nerve. So maybe that story is true, but
Right.
I agree with you that it's a bit suspicious. It's a bit cheap, but
Right.
maybe we don't know how these things work, and we're not experienced in plotting murder.
Right. To conclude, Terry, what do you make of the comment from the police officer, I forget her name, who has explicitly mentioned the Bishnoi gang, Lawrence Bishnoi connection?
Yes, yes, that's also very cinematic, isn't it?
It
But
is.
another thing that I find hard to believe, but maybe you know more about this kind of thing, but I find it a little bit hard to believe that a serious gangster from his jail cell in India is directing murder operations around the globe. That would exactly. I mean, I think I'm not alone.
Uh,
Finding that really hard to
if he
believe.
had state help in some
You are,
fashion,
but
perhaps.
yeah, I mean the trials will come up, and they're going to shed new light on some aspects of this, even if they don't say, okay, now to such one of the accusers made a deal with the prosecution where in return for a light sentence, going to rat on the people who paid it.
Right.
My belief is that probably in that case, as in Israel, you may not know who paid them because there's a drop box somewhere and there's cash in there, and well, I'm not going to introduce myself as the guy who's paying. Although that
Right.
is apparently what happened in the New York case. I mean, there's a picture of the down payment of $15,000 in evidence. So
Yes.
I guess all things are possible. I mean, there could be some things that seem pretty fantastic to us now that turn out to be true, and there may be other things who
Right.
tend to feel a hidden official governmental hand. And I think that somebody will have to be thrown to the wolves. But the Indians cannot go on. I just add one thing. I do not think the Indians can continue. And I'm sympathetic to their case. They are correct. Canada has been shamefully tolerant
Right.
and indulgent of the Khalistani threat. It's just gone way too far. But I don't think they can go on saying to the Americans, oh, we're going to take your case very seriously. Set up a high-level commission. It's on its way, or they're in the U.S. now. I think it soon will be anyway. And we're going to work with the Americans and then turn around and say that the same story from the Canadians
Right.
is We're not. It's preposterous. I think those are both quotes.
Right.
I don't think you can. I mean, pick a lane.
True.